Hello everyone, welcome back to the Occasional Farm Boy. Thanks for tuning in everyone. What's on for today's schedule? Well, last video of the John Deere 830, it was removing the clutch the main crank bearing, and that went well. And well, this was the result of the old bearing, lots of pivoting back and forth, which as it pivoted all the way to this part of this position here, it would have restricted the oil flow to the actual crank. So the amount of oil lubrication that the crank was getting was decreased by at least 50%. So the crank wasn't getting lubricated near as much as it should have been, which may have resulted in that crank play that was initially there. So this one here has been removed and we won't be using this one. But while I was off camera, I got the new one pressed into the casting, fully machined out. I got the crank measurements, figured out where center was. John Deere, the tolerances weren't 100% back in the day in 1959. So we had to do a bit of measurements, make sure the crank was square with the actual crankcase, make sure that when the crank is sitting in the neutral position, that it's in the exact center of this 10-inch pilot hole, let's say. Make sure that was in the center. And then we had to take the casting and see how that fit with the thing. So it took quite a bit of measuring and going back and forth, making sure there wasn't some weird thing we were missing out. And well, we came out with the final product. So here's the final product. We have the bearing, new bearing pressed in. It's a tight fit. It doesn't slide around and stuff. So that's real nice. And then we just had the safety pin inserted in, pressed in. This was the old one, but because of the wear from that previous bushing, sliding back and forth, it wore the top of this one down. So the top is a little thinner. And while the bottom part wasn't pressed in as firmly as I would like to, so used one of these Allen key bolts, and it's not threaded in, but it's pressed in, and it's pressed in good that I'm happy with it. What else? We got new gasket here, as I mentioned in the previous video. Got a new O-ring, I guess, from John Deere. They had that, so I got one of those. Degreased all the surfaces with brake cleaner. And yeah, all the millings and shavings are all blown out of here. So this one here should be good to set right back into the engine. All our bolts are all laid out here. I figured out which ones go where. That way the curvature of the actual tin stays good and it'll line up with the tin work. One thing with this here, we, as well as milling the inside, we also milled the outside a bit. Over here, actually, you can see it better. We had to mill this part here off a little bit because it was a little high, and for it to be center with the crank, we just shaved off, I think it was like seventh thou or something. I think we milled off 7th thou with the lathe. So that really helped centerize it and make sure we got that little bit of end play. Well, apart from the external work, we also did some internal work into the crankcase here. Inside here, it was all full of oil, and the bottom had a thick layer of stiff, greasy gook. So I went through 2 cans of brake cleaner and got my brother, who has a much thinner arm than I do, to reach around the back of the canister there and able to get all that gunk out of the bottom. And now I can see the bottom, and much cleaner than it was. And then hopefully that way, when I put new oil in, it doesn't get dirty right away, because we're starting off with pretty much a fresh crank. And here's all the black oil in there. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep letting it drip a little bit more. That way we can get all of it out. But that was a big difference in the crankcase. And I made sure the screen down there was all clear up, so we have no restriction there. Just make sure everything's good going in there, and everything looks good now, so that's good. Clean up the surface here on the outside of the crank so we have a good fitting for the gasket. Now for the gasket here. Now for this gasket here, this is we got to soak this one in water, and it's a slightly smaller. It's almost like it's shrinked a bit, because it doesn't quite line up with the holes. As I go around, the holes get less and less aligned. If I line up this oil hole, and the holes start to get off a little bit more and more as it goes. So I'm hoping that when we put this in the water for it to soak up, it'll clear itself out a bit better. So I'll just put it in there. Try not to have the wrinkles too much. So then all these bolts here, clean those up with brake cleaner. Loctite on them for sure. Make sure those ones don't come loose. And then I'll use the jack to jack it right up against the top of this surface here, so I know this crank will have enough play in it. Well, I think this gasket's ready to go on. It feels soft enough already. So send that one on to the main casting there. Alright, so I just cleaned it up with a little bit of water. With the towel. And yep, it fits on here way nicer than it did initially. So that's real big relief there. Don't have to worry about that too much. It's a slight disalignment, but I think I'll line up the bottom holes here to make sure this oil seal has good access to the pressure. So I think I got this right. This bearing goes down and the opposite goes on top of it, the upside down. Alright, so we're at this stage where kind of can't go any farther. So okay, this is going to be a bit of some tedious work. So I'll catch up with you guys as soon as I got the two seals in. So it looks like I might have missed a bit of the video here, but I got the casting on with the bearings and the seals in, and then used the jack down here to jack up the bottom of it, so the top of this would be right up against the top, and that's where we wanted it to be. And then I tightened up all those bolts. I still got to tighten them up as tight as I can, and then this side should be good. Reinsert that oiler, of course, and then yeah, then it's good. So I got all the main bolts for the main crank bearing, got them all tightened up. Tighten them up, the book specifies 150 foot-pounds or something. I forget what that unit is. Pound-foot? Yeah. And so the book said 150, I did 170. One of the reasons was because I shaved off the top bit and then I jacked up to push it up, so I don't want it to shift or anything. So I got all of them up to 170, and then pinched over those tabs again so the bolt didn't move. And yeah, now it's in. Now we're ready to put in the back gears, and then later on the clutch and the whole side cover. So that'll do it for this one. Thanks again for watching, and hope to see you on the next one. It's a lot of fun getting this thing back together, and every step of putting a new piece on really helps visualize getting it closer and closer to being completed. So with that, we'll see you later.